The Dale Show.
Welcome to the Dale Show. I'm Dale. This is Mr. Jeffrey Gauthier.
Hello.
I like to pronounce it as pretentious as possible.
Fancy
Also
style.
known as Goats or
Hello.
Goatsy. Well, I guess we should call you Goatsy.
Oh,
For
the 90s was hard.
Anybody 35 and older would
totally.
know why that's a bad reference.
Man, so the goats thing, like I was goats well before that internet piece happened. And then when that internet piece happened, I just became extra famous. It was wonderful.
Mm-hmm. It's funny
Bless
because
you.
nowadays, if that happened, you'd be like, can I turn this into more political or not political, social
Clout?
media clout?
Yeah. That'd be my new NFT.
Oh, dude, I wonder if there is a Goats NFT.
There's gotta be. There's gotta be.
Yeah. Okay, back on track. Oh, I just wanted to start with a little preamble because today's episode is about the occult beliefs of the Nazi Party. And I'm just going to say, when I decided to do this 2 weeks ago, I was like, oh, I'll just listen to a couple podcasts, do my usual thing, do some research, maybe read a little bit of books online and stuff. And then what happened was it was like I turned over a couple logs, and instead of finding bugs, I found as much bad shit crazy as you can possibly handle. It's like I started reading this, and then at 2 a.m. last night, I was like, have you ever seen the movie In the Mouth of Madness?
I have not. That was one
Okay.
It's on my list.
It's basically the whole plot of the movie is this writer is talking to demons, and he writes this novel. And if you read it, it makes you go insane and like demons come to the earth.
Okay,
But there's
yeah.
this one point where this guy walks up and he's like, do you read Sutter Kane? And he's got this like axe with blood all over it, and he's just bleeding out of the eyes. And that's what I felt like last night after I got into fucking like Lemurian laying egg bullshit. I was like, what?
Yeah, you have stigmata at 2 a.m. It's like all your orifices are bleeding, and you're just like, oh God, what have I read? What have I done?
Because what I thought would happen was I was like, oh, the Nazi Party, they like, you see it in movies and stuff where they're like into the occult and they're like, oh, we're going to go look for the Holy Grail and the Spear of Destiny and maybe get some powers to try win the war. And you're like, think it's like little cute shit like that. But no, it's like
it's much darker, much deeper.
And it starts before the Nazi Party. Like, I thought it was just like Hitler being like enigmatic, being esoteric, and be like, hey, I like this weird stuff. But it was like all of Germany beforehand. So
hold on. That's how the Nazi power got into party. There was such a belief in all of that stuff that made it much easier for the population to buy into it.
Oh yeah,
it's wild.
It's crazy. Like you're hitting it right on the head with that. So I wanted to start with a quote by a guy who wrote a book about all of this that I didn't read because I found out about it last night. And you know how it is when you make a podcast, you're like, you can't go 6 months in between episodes. And it's like, I started reading this and I was like, I could write a book about this shit instead of just having like a 1 or 2 hour podcast.
Yeah.
So the quote is by Nicholas Goodrick Clark. In 1985, he released a book called The Occult Roots of Nazism, which, if this piques your interest, that's probably a good book to go read, except for I find a lot of people, like the other thing that I sourced for this podcast is episode 157 of the last podcast on the left from 2015. They're like basically like what I do, but way better at it because they go back
polished
and they research, and they have one guy who reads through his notes, and then the other two guys make dick and fart jokes, which is like perfect. But
I thought it was here.
Yeah. That's what we're here for.
Excellent.
Like, that's my whole spin on stuff is like, I'll read stuff and I'll be like, when can I make jokes about them fucking?
Or laying eggs in this case.
Yeah, there you go. But my problem with the last podcast on the left, like I was saying about this Goodrick Clark character, is sometimes they belittle the importance of stuff. Like on the last podcast on the left, they kind of just did a flyby. They're like, oh yeah, he liked Blavatsky, and they did some theosophy stuff. And I was like, whoa, what? Theosophy? That is like 8 cans of worms that I just like, I opened one and I was like, oh shit, this is more interesting than Nazism bullshit. So I'm going to read this. So
clickable link after link after link after link after
like,
link. And you just, now I'm into it.
Yeah, like I tweeted out, you replied to it. It's like, I'm going to start judging my podcast research by how many Wikipedia tabs I have open. Yeah, and I had 5 deep. And do you want to hear what they are?
Yes, I do.
So I've got occultism and Nazism open. Root race, which you're like, what the fuck? That'll come into it. That's where all the fun stuff happens. Ariosophy. Yeah. And then I was trying to look up Vril and Vril Society, but nothing came up.
I don't know what that is. I've heard that as well, but I'm not sure.
From my best guess is Vril is a type of energy that ran Atlantis, and Germans kind of believed in it too. And then like I was like, I heard like whisperings of like a Vril Society where they like, but I think that might have been in movies and stuff.
Yeah.
Like that would be the esoteric occult branch of the Nazis, but nothing really showed up. But don't worry, there's enough esoteric occult bullshit coming up.
Did you clear your browser history last night after you were done all this, or are you expecting the FBI at your doorstep sometime?
Dude, if the FBI didn't show up as soon as I attached the DuckDuckGo extension to my Chrome.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think you're pretty safe right now. Yeah. You're not the only guy exploring this vast and ridiculous topic.
Yeah, they're like, what? There's a guy in Canada reading about.
He knows about the Vrils. Let's get him. Yeah,
he's on to us.
We got to move into it.
Yeah. Actually, the funny thing is, weirdly, all my conspiracy research and all this shit about the occult is the one thing I never thought would push me back towards Christianity. Because I grew up in the church and I left and I was like, that's bullshit. And now it's basically you start reading about like societies and groups of people who like go away from the church and then they just go like, they're like, we don't really believe in the church and they're overreaching rules and stuff. And then they're like over here trying to kill mankind because they got so fucking crazy and dark. And you're like, do I have to pick one or the other? Because I don't want to.
Yeah, it's kind of like it gives you it's like anything. Like you look at all these beliefs and they give you a framework, right? It gives you like a framework for modeling your life. If you don't have a framework to model your life, you're aimless and you wander, right? So like it's easy to see how people are like, oh, I could believe in this God or this inspirational leader or this like it's any of it. It's cult stuff too, right? Like you can pick any cult leader, any deity, any sort of belief in someone who's charming and personable and loud and has a plan, and people are like, oh cool, I'll just follow that person, it makes sense. So like if you don't have a framework for your life, it's very simple to just be kind of like, man, what's the point, right? So it's much easier to like believe in something, even if you only believe in like 60% of it, or 51%, it's just over half. I guess I'll believe in this.
And the good thing is like it's like it's almost okay to keep like Christianity on the back burner and be like, you don't really have to believe in it, but if you keep it there, anytime any of this occult shit comes up, if you start believing in that, you're like, well, if that's true, then Jesus is true, so I'll just go be with the good guy.
Yeah, right. Like Bigfoot or Jesus, it's the same.
Okay. 5 minutes ago, I said I was going to start with a quote. And then I said the guy's name and went down a rabbit hole. So I'm going to read that quote now.
Welcome to the Dale Show. Here's your first quote.
Hey, this is episode 8. If you're not used to sidetracks, then
you're in the wrong
wrong spot. Yeah. I mean, that's the whole reason why I got a guest with me, like Geoff. It's supposed to keep me on track, Geoff.
Failed on
but it's like
duties.
I noticed when I was doing this just by myself and I was talking, I would do that. Like I would like start somewhere and then I'd be like, oh yeah, that reminds me of this. And I would just go into the woods. And my own brother, he's like, I can't listen to it. You ramble too much. And I'm like, fair enough.
You in real life did your Google tab clicking thing.
Yeah, exactly.
You're just opening more browser windows.
Yeah.
More
The
browser
problem
tabs.
with Wikipedia is it has links in the stuff you're reading because like a
Yes.
word I don't know will pop up
Yeah, and then
and
you
I'll
click
open
it,
that
and then you
and
read
then I'm
that
fucking
entry,
like,
and then you're like,
yeah,
oh god, here we go. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. So the quote
the
from
quote.
5 minutes or so ago is
Yeah.
fantasies can achieve a casual status once they've been institutionalized in beliefs, values, and social groups. And this is poignant, especially right now, where we're seeing a lot like just take away social groups and put in social media, and that becomes terrifying because it's like so many different groups are trying to just insert beliefs into social media and like my whole thing is like people are just trying to get everybody to fight with each other so that they could just put their like occult dick right in and be like, yo, I'm just putting the chip in, nothing to see here, get rid of Christianity so you can let us evil pricks in.
Oh man, here we go. So that quote, can you read the quote again just one more time? I had something good to add.
Okay.
Can you read one more time?
Fantasies can achieve a casual status once they have been institutionalized in beliefs,
Yeah,
values,
It's-
and social groups.
it's the same as if you say a lie enough, it becomes a truth. It's the same. It's the same. Like it's a parallel to that. That's what I was going to say, right? Like, or if you believe in something long enough, it becomes religion, or it becomes a truth, or
Yeah.
a piece of the fabric of humanity, or the piece of
Exactly.
the fabric of society.
Like if you say a lie 1,000 times, it becomes
Yeah,
truth, or
becomes
whatever
true.
that
Yeah,
one is.
like Dale is extremely good looking.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just keep saying that. I'm gonna post
I
it
mean,
on Twitter right now.
I've already said that to myself 1,000
Yeah,
times, so
I know
it's
you have.
true.
Yeah, it's true at this point, right? So anyway, back on track. So
Okay.
tell me what this quote. So I see what you're saying. Like you're talking about if that quote makes it makes you think about like how social media works, how society works, and how it opens the door for occult thinking. So go for
Yeah,
it.
and that quote basically describes how Germany went from like whatever in like 1900s to fucking crazy batshit occult led Aryan pieces of shit 50 like within 40 years or so. So the Nazi belief system was an amalgam of Teutonic mythology, and I didn't know what Teutonic was, so I looked it up.
Okay, yeah, the Teutons. That's like, yeah. Anyway, go ahead. Carry on.
The basic Teutonic mythology just basically means Germanic paganism, and I guess I'll explain this now. Germanic and German aren't the same two
Not the
things.
same
It's
thing.
like Germanic is what the Romans called the people that were basically between the Rhine River and Warsaw, Poland, and
Yeah.
up. So that's like, I have it on a map.
At one point, Germanic tribes, didn't they? It included like the early Britons as well, like early English people, like prior to England existing.
They were called the Celts.
The Celts, right? Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So if you go Germany, Austria,
Right.
Czechoslovakia, Poland,
The former Czechoslovakia.
yeah, Denmark, Copenhagen's a city, sorry,
Yeah.
Norway, and Sweden,
Sweden.
and maybe Finnish. I don't know, because Finland's attached
Super
to
north.
the top there.
Yeah.
But those are the Germanic people. So when I say Teutons or Teutonic mythology, it's a mythology of all those people. So that's basically, in layman's terms, it's Norse mythology. So Odin, Thor, all those people from the Thor movies. Loki,
Yeah.
shit like that. That's the thing about when you research stuff like this, there's so many like sidebars. You're like, wait, what's Teutonic? And then I'm like, in Norse mythology, like reading about Odin's crows and bullshit like that.
Yeah, you can get really heavy into Norse mythology quite easily, and there's like part of that is there's a crossover here because I don't know, I can't remember, I was watching a movie just recently, and there's a prison scene, and there's, you know how they always break down the prisons into the gangs that are split up into the like very obvious stereotypical things, but there's a lot of the sort of Norse mythology in the like Aryan prison gangs. It's always like their code is Norse, and they have like, it's very heavily intertwined between like the Norse mythology. And I'm not going to try and throw Norse people under the bus, but you see it very frequently that Nazi and Norse mythology cross over quite frequently.
Oh, and that's not by accident. Like
No.
a lot of Nazis were like super into the runes and stuff of Norse.
Yeah.
And they tried to like bring that all in. And this is like actually how Nazism became popular, because it was like a blend of the Teutonic mythology, Atlantean beliefs, and Tibetan beliefs, and they mix this all together to make their new religion.
Yeah.
So it started at the turn of the century with the Industrial Revolution. Like, I don't know if this is like historically, like doctors in history will tell you this is where it started, but this is where I'm going to say it started. And this is where last podcast on the left kind of said it started. So at the turn of the century with the Industrial Revolution, Germany and Austria were like kind of like, I don't know, eating sauerkraut and sausages and fucking having a good time, because back then the cities were full of just rich people who could afford to live there because they're all independently wealthy. So they just had like orgy parties. I'm just dreaming right here. I'm just telling you what I think. They just had like walked around and crushed velvet and said, hey ho, cheerio, and had little mass and like drank really expensive beer. And then like the Industrial Revolution came and they're like, well, let's put all the shitty machinery in the big city where all the rich people live. And the rich people are like, no, don't do that. And then they're like, oh, we got all this machinery. We got to get all these people to run this machines. And the rich people were like, we're not fucking ripping our hands off, because back then, before they had worker safety boards and guards on machinery, people just get sucked right in and chewed out the other side. So rich people were like, because they were smart, they're like, we don't have to do this, so we're not doing this.
Yeah.
So
not a lot of WCB forms to fill out back in the old days.
So the Austro-Hungarian Empire was like, well, we got all these poor people we could bring in. So they started bringing in people that the Germans, let's say, were thinking of kind of below them, because Germany wasn't just racist because of Nazis. Nazis were there because Germany was racist.
Yeah.
Super racist.
And
it's
you see that in European. You see that in early like European culture. It was it's very much a xenophobic sort of mentality the whole way through.
Yeah, and it's like it's even worse, because not only were they super racist, but on top of that, they were super classist.
Yeah.
So it's like they only liked the same races as them that were rich. Like you could have been like me, who's not very well off, and the rich people wouldn't like me, and I'm like, I thought you guys were racist. We're the same color. Like, it's more than that.
Yeah, it's more than that. Yeah, I mean, well, you see that today. So not to go off topic, but this is like the off topic section. You see that in the monarchy, right? Like Europe is still has classist behaviors, and like it's still reflective of the population today. It's there's maybe a bit blurrier lines from meat for the meat grinder in the Industrial Revolution, and sort of now it's just literal locations of where people live within communities, but it's still the same to a degree.
And it's funny you bring up the British and the royals, because it's obviously just color of skin and class, and nothing to do with looks over there.
Looks, yeah.
Because
sweet teeth, bro.
They're not the most handsome royal family. I'm just gonna say, if anything gets me scrubbed from the internet, it'll going
be
after
royal
the
family
royal
bashing.
Family.
Yeah,
the
totally.
Windsors. Because
I have like a weird affiliation with things. Like I'm part British, part French, so it's like.
Are you in secret societies?
I am not. I was approached to be a Shriner at one point a long time ago, but
really?
We can talk about that on another day. But yeah,
dude, did you know Shriner is like
I know
one step below the Illuminati?
Yeah, I could have been there by now had I taken that opportunity when it was presented to me. But
I found out one of my old bosses was in the Freemasons.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, how do you get in the Freemasons? And he was like, by asking questions like that. And I was like, I'm already creeped out.
Yeah. That was sort of how, when I was approached by it, I was, it was interesting because it was, I won't go into super details, but the person that approached me was a jeweler, and, was like, I asked him what a ring was in one of his shops one time, and he was like, oh, you're interested in that ring? Well, let me tell you, it's a Freemason ring. And I was like, okay, tell me more. I'm curious about this, right? And it was it was interesting. It was a neat conversation, and he was like, would you be interested in being a Shriner? And I was like, okay, I'll have to think about it. So I was younger, like quite considerably younger at the time, so I wasn't sure if that was really for me. And I was like, because immediately I thought of the tiny cars. I'm like, I get to drive a tiny car in a motorcade. I'm like, right? And I'm like, I'm a bigger guy. Do I really want to be in a small car?
It becomes
And
even more hilarious if you're a bigger
yeah,
guy.
it kind of does, right? And then
Yeah.
there'd be a fez, and there's like, there's like, yeah, I don't know. That's what the image I had in my head. I didn't really understand at that time, like the secret society part of it. So I was just like, I don't really want to ride around in a motorcade in a tiny car.
I mean,
So
of the secret societies, the hilarious Shriners are pretty much the best, most fun group.
let's not forget though that they also like they do. I'm not like neither advocating nor poo-poo at the Shriners, but they do some incredible charity work as well. So that was the other part of the interesting part of it. Like they help children's hospitals for the most part and stuff. And I was kind of like, okay, I can be cool with that. But I was like a young idiot college student. Like I didn't have any means to become a Shriner and help people at that time, or so I thought. So
yeah.
You know. Anyway, I got off topic. But we're so carry on.
You provide the meat, they provide the spice.
They
will it's funny because like it's funny how low on enrollment all these secret societies are. Like Netflix has a series on the Freemasons in Europe where they're like, this is what our lodges look like, and you're like, oh fuck, nobody's joining you guys, huh? You're desperate. But okay, back on task. We all got to stop envisioning Geoff in a fez in a tiny car for a couple of minutes here.
That's a Photoshop project for next week.
So rising resentment for these poor people in their cities, basically dragging down the party, was rising in Germany. And this guy named Guido von List, he elaborated a racial religion premised on the concept of renouncing the imposed foreign creed of Christianity and returning to the pagan religions of the ancient Indo-Europeans. That's basically Indo-Europeans. I didn't know, so I'm just going to explain it to everybody else who might not know. That's basically Germany over towards Russia. That's the Indo-Europeans. In this, he became strongly influenced by the this word. Every time I try to pronounce this word, it's like one of those words that's so easy, but so hard. It's theosophical.
Yeah.
Like
theosophical.
And it's like, I don't know why. I'm just like, I always forget that first O.
You're a stumbler. It's all good. Theosophical.
Perfect guy to have a podcast. The guy who can't read.
The guy who can't read.
Why not? Hey, how's this for a podcast for a guy who can't read? I took a whole bunch of stuff to read.
There you go. Yeah, totally. I'm just going to read a bunch of things on the podcast.
Theosophical thought of Madame Blavatsky. Do you know Blavatsky at all?
I don't.
Is this a person I should? Okay.
No.
So in, I think around 1850, there was this rich kind of daughter of some royals. It's like ancillary royals where they weren't like the czar and shit. She was just like a royal-ish. She wasn't quite a princess, but she basically had enough money to not have to go sully her hands with work.
Yeah, she's aristocracy, right? Like she's somebody important.
Yeah, so she traveled the world. She was like looking for meaning outside of the church. She was self-educated, so that's always a problem because she's only got the knowledge that she found herself. So then people like this, if their whole world is built of knowledge that they only brought to themselves, then they start to see themselves as the wisest person.
Yeah.
Because they didn't have influences and stuff. So she searches around and she claims that she goes to Tibet and she's taken to an underground cave where she showed the Secret Doctrines. And this is basically a write-up of kind of like the evolution of the human race and stuff. Okay. And then it's like, what was it? She's attached to the original secret masters and stuff. So she
her
like
bloodline is?
No, she says she
okay. Oh, got it. Yeah.
Like this is all according to her.
According to her. Yeah.
Like bullshit. Like she goes to Tibet. She gets introduced to these monks who know about the secret masters. Gotcha. And then she tells everybody like this is like the whole John Smith Mormonism thing where it's like they only talk to me, guys.
Yes.
So come to me, I'll write it down, and then you just follow those rules because she's basically turned herself into this like megalomaniac.
Exactly, yeah.
So yeah, she gets that, and then she starts, and then these original masters had the root races, and
Oh, here comes one of
here
those
comes the
cans of
root
worms.
races.
Yeah. Oh no.
So
Excited to see where this is going.
okay, so there's 7 root races, and this is back when, before they had like nuclear dating and stuff, so they only
Right.
thought the earth was 200 million years old. So if I say a date within these million of these root races, just kind of times it by 4 or 5,
Right.
because they thought dinosaurs were 35 million years ago, like the
Yeah.
Jurassic period, when it was like 120-ish.
There's a skew to the table
Yeah.
of date ranges.
Okay, so the first root race was ethereal, and they were called the
Okay.
Polarians,
The
and they
Polarians,
were
okay.
composed of etheric matter. They reproduced by dividing like amoeba, and these guys were around basically when the earth had formed and started cooling. These people were just there. I don't know how they were living before it. This is all like, this is kind of where you get into like,
yeah,
this is some hokey shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I guess I would have to say this episode is got the bad shit emblem because it's crazy shit. It's not like exactly
Bad shit.
It's not like the Templar Knights episodes where it was all mostly reality and historical. Right. This is just like people made up this bad shit, and I'm just telling you it because I think it's interesting.
Well, you can see it because like if you think about it as the earth is formed.
You froze again.
It's very like weirdly scientific based.
Oh, all of that we didn't get because you froze.
Oh crap! I'm sorry.
You're like, you could tell this was fake because when the earth formed and then you froze, and I was like, this is probably some good shit.
Oh, it was some good shit. I was just thinking like scientifically, if you're talking about the earth's original development, if they're thinking about the earth's original development, you have these ethereal caste people who are splitting like amoebas. So it's very much like the soup of the earth. These people would just split. They would like, they're looking at it as like base science almost, right? Like you have these single cell or multi-cell organisms, and they're sort of people, but they split apart, they divide to procreate. Then it's very in line with probably other thinking at the time, or the beginning of the sort of scientific method of how life began. So they're kind of onto something there.
Yeah, I mean, if this could be them just like a parallel to like single cell amoebas or something.
Yeah, totally.
They were
like prior to that happening.
Yeah, they were selling, these people were like in the ethereal plane, which is like, I tried to find this out in my fucking deep dive into different shit, and apparently it's something like dark matter, negative matter. That's what the ethereal plane is. It's like plasma. I don't know. They weren't like, this is what ethereal means. They're like, it's just one of those things people refer to, and nobody can explain exactly what it is.
Unsolved
like
mystery.
When you say that term into the ether, it means it's gone, because
there's nothing you can't track it, and there's no way to classify the data. Yeah.
Okay, so the second race was the Hyperborean, and the second race was colored golden yellow. Hyperborea included what is now North Canada, Greenland, Iceland, Scandinavia, Northern Asia, and Kamchatka. The climate was tropical because Earth had not developed an axial tilt. And they called themselves the Persians.
So this area would have been sort of equatorial at the time, or like roasty toasty.
No, what happened was ancient people like this, like if you look now, the Earth's on like a 22 degree tilt. And that's why we get seasons, because half the year we're tilted towards the sun, half the year we're tilted away from the sun. And this period, a lot of people say there was no tilt. So it would have been like summer, because there would have been like,
or the landmass wouldn't have shifted. It would be rotating
going from fall to spring, and so it wouldn't have warmed and cooled. So that's why that happened. And then
it's the McDLT of Earth. The hot side stays hot and the cool side stays cool.
Yeah. Okay. And then the third race was the Lemurians. And
this is where I'm excited.
according to theosophists, existed in large part of what is now known as the Indian Ocean. So it used to be like Lemuria used to be this giant continent that the tail end was Australia, and it kind of sunk over time, including Australia. And extending to the South Pacific Ocean, its last remnants are the Australian continent, the islands of New Guinea, and the islands of Madagascar. Lemuria sank gradually and was eventually destroyed by incessantly erupting volcanoes. According to traditional theosophy, the Lemurian root race began 34 million years ago in the middle of the what was believed Jurassic period. So these people lived side by side with dinosaurs. And this is what I was talking about.
Yeah, this
because
timeline.
Anybody who knows their history, not like me, I was like, yeah, that sounds right. I don't know when the Jurassic period was. Yeah. So I looked it up, and it was actually 4 times longer ago than that. Yeah. And that's the main date. The Lemurian race was much taller and bigger than our current race. The first 3 sub-races of the Lemurians reproduced by laying eggs, but the 4th sub-race, beginning 16.5 million years ago, began to reproduce like human beings, like modern humans. So it's like, I mean, if you think about it, human women
they technically make eggs. Is that where you're going with this?
If you think of the placenta sac as the eggshell, you could think of it as humans lay eggs, they just pop inside of the belly, and then the baby comes out, and then all the
I've seen the placenta firsthand, so I'm aware of how you could misconstrue that as it's pretty terrifying.
Yeah,
it's beautiful. Life is beautiful. Life is great. The reproduction of life is amazing. It's not gross or disgusting at all when it plops onto the floor in front of you.
Yeah, I mean, thank God for women that it doesn't come out like eggshells like a chicken.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just like some soft gelatinous.
It's pretty viscous. Yeah, totally. So it's not hard or crunchy in any fashion.
Yeah.
This brings back some PTSD from birth. Okay, all right.
Okay, so that brings us into, what was that? The 4th? Oh, that was the 3rd Lemurian, and the 4th is Atlantean, which is my favorite. Yeah. Like anytime Atlantis comes into the picture, I'm like, I'm here. Yeah. Just tell me everything.
Yeah. I remember. I remember. I worked with this guy, and he was like, "Hey, have you ever watched Stargate Atlantis?" And I'm like, "I've never seen any of this." He's like, "Oh, it's like this science fiction thing. It's totally rad." And I'm like, "Okay." He's like, "You got to start with the first Stargate, though." And this brought on this whole thing where my wife, he lent me the DVDs at this time back in the old days, and my wife and I watched all of the Stargate SG-1. All of the Stargate Atlantis seasons, like all of them. We just could not stop watching them. It was so fascinating. So I'm really the Atlantis stuff is anyway, carry on.
I gotta watch that.
I'm very eager to hear what you have to say.
That was a show that kind of came out before streaming and stuff, and I was like,
yeah.
Because when it came out, I was like a poor college student. I was like, I want to watch this, but I didn't have cable, and then I kind of just forgot about it till you brought it up, and I was like,
the Stargate Atlantis series is wild. It like blends sort of Egyptian mythology with science fiction, with there's like a lot of crossover between the Egyptians and the Atlanteans too. So like it's and because you're coming from the Stargate 1 series, which was very heavily Egyptian based, and it's wild, man. It's really
is MacGyver in it?
MacGyver is he's in the first one, but I don't think he's in. I think he makes a couple of guest appearances in Atlantis, but he's not in there for the whole time.
Oh, okay.
Teal'c, the big half Egyptian, half future guy, he's in it in both series.
That's a slab of man for you.
It is a slab of man. I don't have anything further to say. I didn't want to interrupt you. I just wanted to tell you that I'm stoked about Atlantis stuff too. So let's go.
Okay.
Let's go.
This is basically, once I got into Atlantis was involved, was when I was like, okay, I'm not talking about Hitler that much anymore. I'm just going to talk about this stuff, because everybody knows Hitler was a jerk or whatever. He did all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. But Atlantis, come on. If you listen to these past episodes, anytime ancient shit we don't know about comes up, I'm like, see, I'm going over here.
Yeah. That's a Google link, your Wikipedia entry you are following without hesitation. And I'm not going back to the previous page.
It's like the FBI's like, wow, this guy really likes esoteric shit, eh? And we're like,
Various ephemera of the interwebs.
I mean, if you want to get into meta conspiracies, every guy who starts into conspiracies, it's always like a baby conspiracy like JFK or the moon landing or 9/11. And then they just hit shit like Atlantis and they're like, well, this is way more interesting. So I'm just going to shoot down this rabbit hole and not go back. So it's like maybe the government sets it up. So they give you like breadcrumbs leading you away from politics and into fucking esoteric shit.
So Atlantis is the Hollywood of conspiracy theories. Yeah. It's glamorous, it's glitzy. That's where they want your focus and your attention on. So as an amateur occluded history enthusiast, I've just started. I'm entry level occluded history enthusiast. I find all this shit fascinating. So I'm excited to hear what you have to say. I'm sorry I keep interrupting you. I'm just
that's fine. That's what you're here for.
Yeah.
It's like you get into Atlantis and then people are like, do you think the moon landing was real? And you're like, who gives a fuck? Atlantis. Yeah. They drove ships based on like powered by Vril. We don't know.
We don't know what Vril is. Is that like krill? Is it just crushed up tiny sea creatures?
Is it more of this fucking ether shit we don't know what it is?
It's ether for sure.
Yeah. Is that what fucking Tesla was trying to get?
There's like a current product that's ether that's like, it's basically an alkyd spirit, I guess, that like people use for like use it to start a car, like old V8s and stuff. If you want to get a car started, you spray ether into the carburetor and it like starts the car up.
That's just disinformation, Geoff. They made that, they called that ether so we wouldn't look into Vril.
So we wouldn't look into it any further. It's just a modern product that's made out of like it's alcohol and fuel derivatives.
Yeah.
Because
now you're like, oh, Atlantis and ether. People are like, that stuff I spray into my Volkswagen Rabbit's carburetor.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally.
You're like, no.
Yeah, they're not the same thing. They're not the same thing. If I spray enough of this into the air, I will see you into the future.
Yeah. Plus you can get high. I mean, you can probably get high off of Vril too. Okay, so I'll stop calling it ether and I'll just refer to it as Vril.
Cool.
And so Vril's just the magic power that made Atlantis work.
You know what it mimics? Vril is similar to mana. If you think about like that sort of history part about like in the Christian mythology, mana, the food that people you know about mana, right? Like,
oh dude,
was it food? Was it energy?
I've been listening to the Bible.
Yeah.
And mana is like dew that turns into a white crust, and then they go scrape it off the desert floor. So basically they're eating crusty white shit dew that they scrape out of the sand, and then they're like, and then they're like, hey, we should make this into buns with yeast. And God's like, I hate yeast.
Yeah, exactly. Only. Yeah. So it's wild, right? Like you see these cross comparisons, right? Like you have something like mana, you have something like Vril, and they're like basically the same concept. It's energy from another place, right? That powers your pieces, powers your people, powers your whatever. Yeah, it's interesting. There's similarities. Everything okay? Is that the FBI?
No, I'm just getting some. I'm getting like fucking sun flares because the sun's. Give me a second. I'm just gonna close the curtain.
Michael Bay presents The Dale Show. Let's do this.
Sorry, guys. If you're watching this on video, you realize that it's changed because I had to close a curtain because the sun was hitting the one spot where it shines in my apartment and hits the camera. And like I was saying to Geoff, I didn't want everybody to assume God's wrath was upon me because right as I make fun of mana, it just like starts blinding.
Starts getting really, really light in your apartment all of a sudden.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of creeped me out. I was like, is there an angel in here? Like, what the fuck?
You just got sprayed with ether.
Yeah. Am I losing consciousness? Okay. Back to Atlantis. The fourth root. Me and my tack.
The fourth root
race.
Got it.
Red leather, yellow leather. The Atlanteans, according to Okay, I'm just gonna start over.
Philosophers.
I'm gonna clip that part out so people don't think I am illiterate. The fourth root race, the Atlanteans, according to theosophy. Why do I have so much trouble with this word?
Theosophy.
I know, right?
The fourth root race, Atlanteans, according to theosophy.
Thanks, Geoff.
You're welcome.
The fourth root race, the Atlanteans, according to theosophy, arose approximately 4.5 million years ago in Africa.
Nailed
The
it.
Atlantean root race had Mongolian features. They began with bronze skin and gradually evolved into the red American Indian, brown Malayan, and yellow Mongolian races. Because some Atlanteans eventually migrated to the Americas and Asia, the descendants of the Atlanteans, according to traditional theosophy, including those of the Mongolian race, the Malayan race, and the American Indian race, as well as some people of what in the late 19th and 20th centuries was called olive skin Mediterranean races. So those who were, so basically they're saying that the Atlanteans kind of just propagated the earth. And
Right, with
I had,
folks of various colors.
and then, so when I'm
Mainly equatorial.
yeah, when I'm reading the root race thing, there's this giant paragraph mixed in, and it's the civilizations of Atlantis. And I was
Okay.
like, I don't need to read this,
But I want to. But this is, yeah.
Because you need to hear this shit because it's fucking good. Because every time, if you don't know about Atlantis, I'm gonna read you this like big paragraph, and you're gonna be like, "Oh yeah, Atlantis sounds fucking dope," and I want to know everything to know about it. Okay. The long period of time when Atlantis was ruled by the Toltecs, the ancestors of the Amerindians, the civilization of Atlantis was at its height. Sorry, wrong inflection.
Was that time period? Yeah.
Hey, maybe I should learn an inflection before I start reading out loud. This whole podcast is just me reading out loud and then me making fun of myself reading out loud.
Reading out loud
Yeah.
incorrectly.
This was the period between about 1,900,000 years ago called the Golden Age of Atlantis. The Atlanteans had many luxuries and conveniences. Their capital was called the City of the Golden Gates. At its height, it had 2 million inhabitants. There were extensive aqueducts leading to the city from a mountain lake. The Atlanteans had airships powered by vril that could seat 2 to 8 people. The economic system was socialist like that of the Incas. Atlanteans were the first to develop organized warfare. The military developed vril-powered air battleships that contained 50 to 100 fighting men. These air battleships deployed poisonous gas bombs. The infantry fired fire-tipped arrows. The Toltecs on Atlantis worshipped the sun in temples as grand as those of ancient Egypt that were decorated in bright colors. The sacred word used in meditation was Tao. This was the equivalent to the Aryan sacred word of Aum, as noted above. The Toltecs colonized all of North America and South America and thus became the people we know as the Amerindians. The downfall of Atlantis started when some of the Toltecs began to practice black magic.
Oh, here we go.
About 850,000 BC, corrupted by the dragon Thevatat, remembered as Devadatta, the opponent of Buddha. It just went from fucking 0 to 100.
Yeah, that escalated quickly. Yeah.
Like, oh, they're fighting Buddha now? Shit.
Yeah,
the people began to become selfish and materialistic. Soon thereafter, the Turanians, the ancestors of the people we now know as the Turkic peoples, became dominant in much of Atlantis. The Turanians continued the practice of black magic, which reached its height about 250,000 BC and continued until the final sinking of Atlantis. Although they were opposed by white magicians, the Master Moria incarnated as the Emperor of Atlantis in 2200 BC to oppose the black magicians. The black magicians used magical spells to bring human animal chimeras. Like, it just keeps getting better.
Oh
now there's fucking centaurs and shit.
They cannot be any harder right now.
Right? They possessed an army composed of chimeras that were composites, composed of human body with the heads of fierce predators such as lions, tigers, and bears. Oh my.
Oh my. Oh my god, those are the fiercest of predators.
Yeah, wait, do you think that song Lions and Tigers and Bears Oh My is a reference to this?
I'm gonna guess that existed before the Wikipedia entry. The song existed before the Wikipedia entry. So
there
I'm gonna
you
say
go.
that is an editor on Wikipedia being fucking playful.
Yeah. Sweet dig, bro. That's the nerd Wikipedia editor.
Oh my god, you know it is.
He's like, this is grade A comedy.
Yeah. You know, it'd be funny is if I put lions and tigers and bears at the end of my sentence, because everyone who reads this is going to say, "Oh my," after it,
right?
Oh my.
And then it's like, now that that's playful, they're like, oh yeah, and those lions, tigers, and bears, they ate the corpses of their enemies after they killed them on the battlefield.
There it is, just ruining,
So like,
just completely
imagine
ruining
that.
it.
You're like fucking, I don't know, Joe Blow, you're in the army, it's 2200 BC, nobody's gonna remember this, all your records are getting destroyed, and you're like, I'm fighting fucking werebears and half lions and all this bullshit, and they're fucking killing us, and they killed my friend Joe, and then they ate him, and nobody's gonna know about this.
And here comes a chimera. Cool.
Yeah.
There's a three-headed beast on four legs charging at me right now. The bears and the lions become the least of my worries. At one point, I swear to God, you were going to say, at one point, I swear to God, you're going to say these vril-powered airships containing 30 to 50 feral hogs descended from the heavens. Oh my God! Sorry.
I just wanted to point out that the lions, tigers, and bears were not lions, and tigers, and bears. Those were the chimeras. They were half human, half lions, half tigers, and half bears. So which I mean, if you're gonna make chimeras, why would you make lions and tigers? Wouldn't you want to mix it up? Like you get lions and then tigers
from the cat family. It's two
like,
from the cat
heads
family.
Are different color.
Yeah, two from the cat family, one from the Ursa, the bear family. Like
I know.
Yeah.
Like if I was, like you said, I would get one lion,
bear, tiger,
bear.
Yeah.
Like get a warthog type of deal.
That's a good one.
Or fucking okay. Let's take a second here. Whoa, like for the seals.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're making chimeras. You're fucking black magic Atlantean.
Any three black magic animals.
And your whatever leader's like, give me 3 chimeras. And you're like, obviously lions and bears, no doubt, 2 best animals. Yeah. What's your third?
Yeah, I think for me, I'm thinking shark, or possibly if you can make it, if it's non-mammalian. If it's non-animal, so what could it be? Like a scorpion? Could you do a scorpion?
Oh, dope! Like in Scorpion King with the Rock, when he goes into really bad 100%.
CGI. That was exciting. I think if we're gonna create a chimera using black magic, it's gonna look like bad CGI. I think that's the whole jam. It has to.
I mean, if I can make people, I wouldn't even make lions and tigers or chimeras. I would just make soldiers that all look like the Rock.
Yeah, there you go. Take the peak and pinnacle of human specimen and like make many soldiers out of that.
I mean, this might be where the reptilian people came from.
Oh, here we go.
All right. Okay, I talked about that last week, so I'm not going to talk about that.
Okay, my job is to keep you back on track, but I also just watched that cartoon on Netflix. What the hell is it called? The one that was the conspiracy theory cartoon.
Oh, Inside Job?
Inside Job, yeah. And they did that whole episode about the reptilian people.
Yeah.
Like where they had like a completely separate underground what the hell was it? Anyway, they had like their own Oscars, but it was like underground.
Yeah. And Paul Rudd was like, save some blood for Rudd.
Save some blood for Rudd. And sorry, go ahead.
Okay, where was
back on track? You're back at we're just past the war with Buddha with the chimeras.
Wait, I didn't give my answer. You know what? I would go for non-predator, and I would go for a prey species, and I would make half humans, half rhinos.
That would be very strong. It's a strong choice. Rhinos are. Oh wait, no, it's hippos. Hippos are the ones that'll mess you up. Rhinos are actually
hippos will fucking bite you in half. I don't know. Hippos don't eat flesh; they just kill flesh, right?
Honestly, I'm assuming because like every picture or like cartoon or image of a hippo seems to have round teeth.
Yeah, that's true.
Front. So I'm assuming they're vegetarians. They hang out in your swamps and stuff.
Yeah. Imagine if your sole defense was biting like stuff in half. Like you just have these giant jaws and you're like biting stuff. And then you're like, wow, now that I could bite anything in half, I'm just going to go eat this bullshit grass and not eat the meat that I ate. Oh, yeah. Sorry. I don't want to offend you, Geoff. You're a vegetarian, right?
That's okay. Yeah, well, I mean, I'm half hippo, so
okay.
Just weak jaws. That's all.
I don't want to.
Dude, doesn't offend me at all.
Microaggression you by saying eating
none whatsoever.
Grass.
Nope. Bullshit grass is delicious. I don't eat grass. Come on.
Oh boy, it just
Yeah.
got awkward here. No, just kidding.
No,
Okay, so
that's why you have me here. You can't make this awkward. It's not possible without.
yeah.
All right. Where are we at, Dale? I'm keeping you on track.
That was for the Dale's attractive is a lie thing that we started off with.
Definitely not a lie. Jeff, look at this man. How can you say that?
Okay, so
All
there's
right.
lions and tigers and bears that eat the enemy corpses on the battlefield. The war between white magicians and black magicians continued until the end of Atlantis. The masters of the ancient wisdom telepathically warned their disciples, the white magicians, to flee Atlantis in ships while there was still time to get out before the final cataclysm, as noted above. The final sudden submergence of Atlantis due to earthquakes occurred in 9,564 BC, which is a
Is that still on the sliding scale of date ranges, or is that
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if because they thought the Earth was only 200 million years ago, but
Yeah.
once you got closer, did it?
Yeah, that date seems pretty reasonable.
But this sets off the 13,000 to 11,000 Graham Hancock warning.
Oh yeah.
That I always talk about every podcast about.
Got to get that in there.
An advanced society that lived up until that period, and then a cataclysm happened, and then they taught hunter-gatherers how to farm. With every time I bring that up in casual conversation, people are like, "What?" And I was like, "Oh, you just got to go listen to my podcast." They're like, "I'm not doing that."
I'm
like,
not doing that.
I don't blame you.
Yeah, that's
I'm just gonna stop talking to you. And then they're like, "Are you a Scientologist now?" And I was like, "We're fighting."
Not yet.
Hey, what if this is all conditioning to get me to become a Scientologist?
Oh boy, here we go. Wow, it's getting deeper and darker every minute.
Okay, to go back a sentence, when I said the masters of the ancient wisdom telepathically warn their disciples, the white magicians, these are the same ancient masters that Blavatsky said she was in psychic contact with.
Okay.
So she, like, her whole point of the, like, how she says she knows about all this bullshit, like the black magicians versus the white magicians, was because the ancient masters told her. So she obviously didn't just make it up.
Yeah. She was told by the masters. I got a direct connection to the people up above.
Yeah, that whole paragraph I read about like the black magician versus white magician,
that's wild stuff
and shit.
Mm-hmm.
Where's my Netflix series on that?
Yeah, right. There's got to be some funding in there. That's that whole like that. I mean, there's an epic battle scene built right in. Right,
dude. Fucking awesome dudes like me, fresh-faced, good white magician fighting a bear person.
Yeah, there's the whole like white and black magician thing is like, could that be any more binary opposition? Right, like, I mean, they talk about black magic, and then they don't talk about that's the thing I find funny about the entry. They don't talk about the white magician ship at all. Like, what are the white magicians making to combat this? Are they literally just hand fighting the black magic made chimeras? It speaks not about black magic making evil shit, and the white magicians are just showing up and being like, stop.
Yeah. They're like, we believe in a higher power of love.
What are the white magicians doing? Are they shooting like laser beams out of their hands or eyes or something? Or like, it doesn't explain any of what the white magicians actually bring to the table.
I would love nothing more than to get a full breakdown of the military powers of the white magicians.
Heck yeah.
Tell you. But they don't. They're just like, oh, hey, guess what? We're going to edge you. We're just going to tell you that they shot fire-tipped arrows and had beast people. We're not going to tell you what the other side had.
So fire-tipped arrows is a very like plausible thing. You can light the tip of an arrow on fire, and fire tips do it all the time. It's also Viking burial style. Oh, crossover.
I pointed it out because I like how they have like mystical energy powered battleships, and they're from those battleships, they're shooting arrows. It's like
modern weapons. Yeah, or like modern standard weapons.
Didn't figure out how to shoot vril. You could just fly a battleship and you can
use it to power your battleship, but you have to use fire and physical arrows to suppress your enemies. But you can fly a ship around with magic fuel.
They're like, okay, we're getting in the mystical battleship that flies. Everybody grab some twigs and string.
Yeah,
We might need to make
totally.
some more bows and arrows.
Yeah. Where's that Fletcher? I'm out of flights for my arrows. I need some
Yeah.
more bird feathers. This is we
Don't
have
forget
Brill.
that.
We have
Oh.
Brill.
Did you guys chip enough rocks for these arrowheads?
Yeah. Can anybody light the Brill on fire and throw it at people? Is it a physical thing?
Yeah.
How do we do this?
They're like, okay, we dropped the gas bombs that are poisoning everybody.
Yeah.
Shoot your Stone Age
Yeah,
fucking
exactly.
weapons
Yeah,
at these people
your
now.
flinty sticks at the bear creatures. This is not effective. We have all this Brill and only arrows to shoot at people.
So much drill, so little time. So
Yeah, right.
from these Atlantean peoples, that's where we get the fifth root race, the current race, the Aryans.
Uh-oh.
This is where all the evil shit comes. Well, they're not evil because they're people, but this is where Guido von List and this other guy who follows Guido von List, they look at this and they're like, how can I change this to be evil and for like totalitarian means?
They probably never thought about it being evil to start with. They probably were just like, how can I use this to my advantage? And it inherently became evil based on
Blavatsky was just like, how can I make this sound so fucking interesting?
that
And then people
are
just
gonna,
bastardized it later.
Totally.
I think she was just like a huckster, and she was like, what can I say to get people to give me money? I'll make up a sweet backstory and how I'm a link to it.
Isn't that what a resume is?
Imagine how like you hire Blavatsky and you look at her resume, it's just like 100 pages long, and this is all the stuff it says on it.
You had me at Chimera. Let's do this. You're hired. Yeah, let's
if
do
you
this.
hire me for the position of HR, I will tell everybody about Atlantis nonstop.
Killer,
like,
you're
I'll
in.
get your resume out.
Yeah, totally. Lunch break. Calling it early. Tell me more about Atlantis.
Okay, so Blavatsky asserted, this is back to root race number 5. Blavatsky asserted humanity is now in the 5th or Aryan root race, which theosophists believe to have emerged from the previous 4th root race, the Atlanteans. So it's like kind of like it's the spin-off series.
Yeah.
Beginning about 100,000 years ago, the 5th root race kind of started when Atlantis was still around. So the overlap between the Aryans and the Atlanteans is about 90,000 years. Wait, what? Okay. So she was saying actually that the Aryan race started 1,000,000 years ago, but it was like, this is where she's like, she had me, and then she gets unnecessarily, annoyingly crazy, because she's like, okay, so these people are around for 100,000 years, so there's 90,000 layover, and you're like, okay, I could see that, like how they kind of started, like, and then she's like, but, and you're like, they're actually 1,000,000 years ago because their souls are 1,000,000 years old, and you're like, okay, I suspended enough disbelief for these like floating battleships. Now you're telling me that there's 1,000,000-year-old souls just physically inserting themselves into this Aryan race, and they skipped all the other ones.
She's just padding the resume at that point.
Yeah. So these 1,000,000 years old people were the souls, and they physically incarnated the first Aryans about 100,000 years ago. However, another way of interpreting this is that the nature began to create the Aryan race before the final cataclysms. Theosophists believe the Aryan root race was physically progenerated by the
stumbling on a word.
Vatu Manu. Okay, I'm gonna edit this out and just say yeah, so sorry I edited it out. That was a big word you don't need to know because the name doesn't come up. I'm just gonna say the leader of the masters of the ancient wisdom told her, pre-generated it. The present day ethnic group most closely related to the new race is the Kabel, Northern Algerians.
Okay. So
and largest Berber speaking population on Algeria. Okay. Still sounds fake.
No, that's a real thing.
Okay. So that's the 5th root race. I kind of was going to go deeper into the fifth root race, but that is way into the weeds. And if you have enough patience to bear with us for this moment, I don't want to get too, because after like it's not as interesting as Atlantis. It's just how 9,000 of them settled in the Gobi Desert and stuff. I guess there you go. So they settled in the Gobi Desert or whatever. So that's the race that's currently, according to Blavatsky, on Earth. So now let's talk about the sixth race. This is the future.
Okay.
And this is kind of where maybe some of the neo-Nazis that are around now, maybe some of them cite this as what their goal is. So I don't know. It's kind of sketchy and it's kind of scary because I don't want to be like, oh, we're totally going to turn into this. And yeah, anyways. So the emergence of the sixth subrace, or the Aryan root race, according to Blavatsky, the sixth subrace of the Aryan root race will begin to evolve in an area of the United States in the early 21st century. The sixth subrace of the Aryan root race will be called the Australo-American subrace and is believed by theosophists to now be arising from the Teutonic subrace of the Aryan root race.
Okay.
So it's basically German immigrants who came to America. Oh, I didn't even talk about this at all. So in the 1900s, early 1900s, there was a group of people who moved to California from Germany who were like, actually, I'll get into that later.
Because that's okay.
That's
a huge thing too. And then they migrated sort of northward towards.
Wait, where was I? The Australo-American subrace, and is believed by theosophists to be now arising from the Teutonic subrace of the Aryan root race in Australia in the Western United States. I'm going to come back to this in the future and talk about how some people moved to California and started the hippie movement.
Oh man.
It just gets its fingers in everywhere. This is what I mean.
On your recommendation, I started reading Chaos just recently.
Oh,
and so like this is all like part of it as well, right? Because you get the Germanic move, not Germanic, that's the wrong term. The German people, the hippies, etc. And it's like, it's all part of that whole. I can't even understand what it was like to live in that era. In the 60s
because
too, right?
If you're unfamiliar with the book Chaos that Geoff was talking about, it is a book that talks about how Charles Manson was actually maybe a victim of MK Ultra and shit.
Yeah.
So if we have Nazis and stuff who moved into California and that's where MK Ultra happened, I'm not saying there's links conjoining the two, but in conspiracy, one of the things you do is every time you see a coincidence, you look at it closer and you're like, is this a coincidence?
Yeah.
Or is this attached in a different way? So if you start looking at that shit, it gets real fuckery. And this is also what I mean by like,
the rabbit hole of doom where you can go down it forever.
Like, oh shit. And then your eyes just start bleeding.
Stigmata. I'm out.
So they moved to where was I? Okay.
Yeah. So you have the German immigration, but you're going to talk about that later.
So basically, this is where the sixth root race will come up.
So is that post-Aryan for the root race? Is that how it works? Like
the sixth root race. Is in the future. I'm just looking for the.
Oh yeah, okay, that's what. So because you mentioned that the fifth, the Aryan, is the current. Race. So the sixth and seventh must be future.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, I had the date written down. Oh yeah, it says in the start of the 21st century. So Blavatsky was writing this in the 19th century, like in the 1850s and shit.
Okay, well, I have a question. Point of order.
Yeah.
So did Blavatsky mention the United States in the?
She came to the United States and hung out, and she started a theosophy society group in, I can't remember what city, but she was in America for a bunch of years, hanging out and telling everybody she was psychic and trying to peddle all this shit.
Gotcha. Okay, roger that.
Yeah, I think she was like, the thing was she liked America the best because back then, if you were rich, like back in like the 1850s, America was like the playground because they didn't have aristocrats and they didn't have like
there's no class
priest
system really
class.
set up. Or
Yeah,
anything.
it was like you came here, and if you had money, you were like you could do anything you wanted. It was like her problem. Like you think, wow, she was an aristocrat, so she could have done anything in Russia. But it's like, no, they have this like super moral, like, oh, you can't look bad type of deal. You got to be good, a pretentious thing that she didn't really run with very well, because let's just say she wasn't a very good looking female. So she was sneered upon. Plus, women didn't really have much rights in the 1850s.
That's right. Yeah.
So yeah,
I guess that was one of the parts that I found amazing at all, was that like a female aristocrat could go around in that era and like, you know, just spout off on kind of anything and talking about Atlantis and the future and history and ethereal and vril and like all these crazy sort of topics, and not get somehow taken out or shuttered or like burned at the stake as a witch or something like that.
Well, there was no internet, so if she was like in a town and people were like, this chick is crazy, she could just leave town. And I think another thing too was she had like male companions the whole time. So like looking back, we know it was all her, but at the time she could have just been, she could have just houseboys pretty much. She could have just been saying that's these guys, like she's only going around America to follow her husband.
Right. Yeah. There's ways to get around it.
Yeah. So it could be like a kind of like a retroactively updating the history, like when it was happening.
Yeah.
Wouldn't have appeared that. Okay. So back to I can't find the date. So it's starting pretty much now, I guess, in the 21st century or in a couple hundred years. So in California and the surrounding areas. The Austro-American subrace is arising from the Anglo-American, Anglo-Canadian, and Anglo-Australian, and presumably also the Anglo-New Zealander ethnic groups. So that's basically all the Canadians, Americans, Australians, and New Zealanders from the Teutonic or Germanic like countries.
Honkies.
Yeah. So basically all the white Europeans that
the white
are
Europeans.
Celtic, Romanic, or Slavic.
Right.
Yeah. To be vague.
None of those olive-skinned Mediterranean folk.
Yeah. This is where it gets interesting again. The sixth subrace will possess certain psychic powers. And for this, the pituitary body will be developed, thus giving an additional sense, that of cognizing astral emotions in the ordinary waking consciousness. We may say that in general, the sixth subrace will bring in wisdom and intuition, blending all that is best in the intelligence and the fifth subrace and the emotion of the fourth.
So
that
we had a
awesome.
roommate. We had a roommate one time that had a suspiciously large head, and we'd always sort of wondered if they were psychic, because there's like this weird intuition thing. Yeah. Anyway, it's unrelated. Yeah, I'm like, that's it. If you have a large head, so that's possible. It's possible that they're more advanced and have a bigger brain.
Like his 100% brain power, or my 100% brain power is only 90. Or
exactly. Yeah, totally. There's an extra level of brain power there at that point. So you're just like, oh, okay, interesting. Yeah.
Oh, this is where it gets even better. So the theosophical, like C.W. Ledbetter, Beater, which reminds me of that Pearl Jam song, is just some schmo in the, basically all you got to know is he's some schmo in the Theosophical Society. But he says that under the guidance of those ancient masters in the 28th century, for the intensive selection of eugenic breeding of the sixth root race, the master Moria that was that girl, remember I said had that super long name? I guess I should have kept that in. Anyways, she will physically she will physically incarnate in order to be the progenitor of this new root race. By that time, the world will be powered by nuclear power, which we kind of got to shift gears and go back to nuclear power if we're going to do that. Like, I guess when Blavatsky wrote this, that was when nuclear power was on the horizon.
Yeah.
And they're like, it looked too good to be true. So they're like, that's the battle to happen. And
if only
actually,
Blavatsky was around to see Chernobyl at 3 Mile Island.
I mean, if you don't let a nuclear plant Chernobyl, then it's still green
It's
energy.
fun. Yeah, it's still
It's funny because
Oh,
nuclear is green
Ninth can of
energy.
worms.
Nuclear energy is green until it isn't,
Until
and
it
then
isn't.
it's the worst.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
It's like
electric cars are green until you realize how they're building.
Yeah. And there will be a single world government led by a person who will be the reincarnation of Julius Caesar, which of all the leaders throughout history, Julius Caesar?
Well, I
I
mean,
mean, he was good, but he wasn't even.
think of the time frame, though. Think of the time frame. Your
Yeah.
options, your most recent option at that point was probably for like a great leader, as an example, was Napoleon, and that was like not a popular stance to take, that Napoleon was good at leadership. And so you go back down to Julius Caesar. That's a stretch a little bit.
Well, I guess this is Blavatsky, because I was looking at it from the Aryan perspective, where they hate the Romans.
Yeah.
So this is pre that kind of skewing of everything.
Okay.
So like personally, I would pick maybe Alexander the Great. But he was kind of like a warmonger too. Like Julius Caesar did have a lot of diplomacy as well.
A little more political.
All right, I'm back on Julius Caesar. He's good.
Okay, cool. You come back around to that.
Yeah, I'm back around.
Maybe romantic, but definitely. Definitely.
In 600 years, the reincarnation of Julius Caesar will make a good leader.
Yeah, there you go.
Tens of thousands of years in the future, a new continent will arise in the Pacific Ocean that will be the future home of the sixth root race. California, west of the San Andreas Fault, will break off from the mainland of North America and be the island of California, off the eastern coast of the new continent.
Oh, man.
So the sixth root race is going to live on broken off California and this
Island?
new continent.
Wow.
I mean,
the rap game is going to change considerably when that happens.
They're going to have to add a couple coasts in there.
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
South coast, north coast, inner east coast.
Yeah. So we're talking like 600 years, 700 years in the future with the 28th century. And you think, well, that must be the final reincarnation of humans. Nope. Here we are with the seventh and last root race. The seventh root race will arise from the sixth root subrace. Sorry, the seventh root race will arise from the sixth root race on the future continent that the sixth root race will be living on. So that's that continent in the Atlantic Ocean. That's where the seventh root race is going to come up from. And
a reincarnation of Atlantis in California.
Hey, nice.
There we go.
I mean, that's
right.
I guess that's why all those
coming full circle.
Yeah, I guess that's why all those Teutonic Germanic pagans came to California. They wanted to be right where it was happening.
Yeah. Migrating to the eventual reincarnation of their home state.
They're like, if I can make it 700 years, I'm going to be a king. This root race. Sorry.
Title of your sex tape. Sorry.
This root race will be the last race to appear on planet Earth. Theosophist Scott Ramsey predicts that any sexual difference among humans will cease to exist, and both conception and birth will become entirely spiritual. Which...
That's happening right now. That's happening.
If we want to get right down to it, they say that the gray aliens are future humans, and they don't have any sex organs because they don't produce by banging each other. And I mean, if we're going to throw down and say that, would you want to live now where you could still have sex, or the future where you...
I'm over 45. You can't ask me that question.
I mean, ask me in a couple of years.
It's a big hassle.
Sex is so dirty. Just use your mind.
Just use your mind. Yeah. Oh my God, that'd be so much easier. I could do it from the couch.
Yeah.
What are we doing right now? Oh yeah, we're getting on. Yeah.
Yeah, in the future, it's like, how'd your date go last night? Oh, we touched spirits last night.
We touched spirits. It was wonderful.
Waka.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, I can see that. I mean, like, but I'm also I go to bed at 9 o'clock and I'm tired all the time, and I'm like, you know what would be cool is spiritual sex would be awesome. So
yeah,
So I can see it, but that's so okay. To jokes aside, no more jokes. Bringing it back around,
Mm-hmm.
the original method of procreation was an amoebic style cellular split.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that much different than the reproduction happening as a mind piece as well, right? So you're coming full circle back to the beginning of what you're talking about, right? Like
That's a good point.
it's a similar kind of like revival. That's the wrong word, but like you come back to this cyclical era of like where rather than a physical split of an amoeba, it's now like a mental divide to produce, or like a ethereal way of reproduction. Aha, it's all tied together.
Okay, so this guy that I mentioned, the theosophist, he also writes, humanity will have a great spiritual development, and he describes this development in the following words. Everything that is irredeemable, sinful, and wicked, cruel, and destructive will have been eliminated, and that which is found to survive will be swept away from being, owing, so to speak, to the karmic tidal wave in the shape of scavenger plagues, geological convulsions, and other means of destruction.
We're currently in the geological convulsions era right now.
I mean, they were wrong with how old the world was. What if they
What if
guessed
it's
the
the
28th
timeline?
century and we're doing this now?
Yeah, the timeline's just skewed again, right? So like there's right, similar to what we experienced earlier in the podcast.
Yeah.
There's maybe a shift, and like, you know, time isn't a perfectly round or linear construct either, right? So like even seasons are not necessarily, you know, they're roughly predictable, but they're not perfectly predictable. So people are like, it's getting colder, or is the calendar wrong, right? Are we actually like, is this actually November, or are we skewing to like what would be September? It's like, it's not right, like it's not a perfect cycle, even though we've broken it down into a perfect cycle. So how does time even work? It's not even real. Time is a construct, and we don't exist. This is all in our brains. We're plugged into the matrix.
That's true.
I've
But
been your co-host, Geoff Gaucher. Thank you for joining us on The Dale Show.
counterpoint, okay, this is a bit of like astrological, like smart guy stuff,
Okay.
which I'm not. So I'm just going to say, like, a lot of the stuff where they mark the summer solstice, spring solstice, and the winter solstice that's when the sun is in the sky, either the least or the most. So in winter, on the summer solstice, the sun goes below the horizon.
Correct. Yeah.
And doesn't come back up for 3 days. So it's like the thing of like it dying. So that's like the shortest day or whatever. So that's how they mark time. And that's what all these like ancient pyramids, like what I was saying 13,000 years ago, this like advanced society taught hunter-gatherers how to farm. That was like basically their planting calendar. They like explained how these things would line up with the sun and when it would set and when it would come up. And that's how they would like they only had two markers. They knew when the middle of spring was and the middle of winter.
Right. Yeah, totally. So, I guess that's what I'm saying is that it's not necessarily the same amount of days in between those two markers, depending on how time works, right? Like it's only a rough calculation that it's a 24-hour clock and that it's broken down into months, and the months have these specific day parts to it, right? So yes, that celestial piece happens and you can mark that, but the days in between shift and change, right? So it's
yeah.
Plus
the axial tilt of the earth is kind of like a wobble.
Yeah, totally.
So it moves. So we're not in the same.
My brain gets broken when I start thinking about that stuff, though. I'm like, what if time isn't actually real and things are all off and everything's So
it's like in the second episode with the pyramids or whatever, I talked about the precession of the equinox.
Yes.
And that stuff, I'm just like, what? There's a grand year that's 30,000 years long. What? And I just like, and it's like, my brain is like, fuck no, we're not doing this. So I'll read that stuff and I'll think about it. And then my brain's just like, nah, it's too hard. And
too
just
hard.
like spits it into the vril.
Yeah. Because nice. The concept. Yeah. Cause like conceptually for us, for our brains and our limited development of our brains, some things like the timepieces and the 30,000 day long year, that shit's like conceptually you can't process it properly. Like
Hmm.
you can theoretically process it, but your brain doesn't work that way, and it's based on its experience. So like you can only,
Yeah.
it's like a mathematical calculation, or it's not something that you can like just go, oh yeah, I totally understand the concept of a 30,000 day year. That absolutely makes 100% sense to me. I can say it out loud. I'm like, nope, that doesn't fucking make it.
Yeah, like we still have to think about it as abstract numbers.
Abstract thought, yeah,
because-
exactly. Yeah, because it doesn't,
Yeah.
because you can't, because we don't live long enough to create that or to understand
Mhm.
that scope of time.
Okay, guys. Me and Geoff discussed this. We're gonna go and try to do this all in one episode. That doesn't mean you have to listen to this all in one episode. You could break this into two because
Break it
this
up.
is the perfect natural breaking point. But I feel like the second half is going to be a lot shorter than the first half. So I didn't want to put it off in its own episode. So I kind of just want to keep it all together in one.
You need the context from the first half to make the second half run
Mhm.
smoothly.
And if you're like me,
Storytelling.
if you listen to one episode and then 2 weeks later someone comes out with the second episode, you're like, I fucking forgot everything
I forgot.
he said.
I listened to like 6 other podcasts. It was made that in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go back. So now that I gave you all the root races information and all the fucking dope, crazy shit that Blavatsky was talking about.
Do a quick recap. Do a quick recap of the seven, like for the second half. Do a quick recap of the seven root
Okay.
races.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
So the root races that were put out by Blavatsky were, I'm just pulling them up again.
Yeah,
The
pull 'em up
first
again.
root race was Polarians. They were like spiritual beings that were around when the earth was cooling. The second root race was the Hyperboreans, and they were like they're in the northern part of the world, like where Antarctica is now. The third root race was the Lemurians. The
Egg
fourth
layers.
root, sorry,
The egg layers.
yeah, the first three groupings of the Lemurians laid eggs. They were probably
Yeah.
dinosaur people. They lived at the same time.
Yeah. Fourth layer, placental standard
Yeah.
birth style.
The egg stayed inside, I guess.
Yeah.
The fourth root race is the Atlanteans. We went through a lot of
Go
good
Atlanta.
shit with that. Yeah. And then the fifth root race was the Aryans. And this is where we're gonna pop back. This is what root race is on right now. And they came out of the Atlanteans. They started like 100,000 years ago, whatever. So I'm not good. So the sixth root race was like is like in the future, and then the seventh root race is like we get like big brains, and we get psychic powers, and
Big
shit.
brains, giant heads.
So remember I mentioned this guy Guido von List?
Love that name.
So he took Blavatsky's teachings about the fifth root race, and he kind of bastardized them, like because this is at the turn of the 19th century. It's like 50 years after Blavatsky was doing her thing, and he's like looking at this, and he's like okay, so Guido von List elaborated a racial religion premised on the concept of renouncing imposed foreign creed of Christianity and returning to the pagan religions of the ancient Indo-Europeans. In this, he became strongly influenced by the theosophical thought of Madame Blavatsky, which he blended, however, with his own highly original beliefs funded upon Germanic paganism. So his concepts of the original religion of the Germanic tribes was the form of sun worship with its priest kings, similar to Icelandic religions. As legendary rulers of ancient Germany, religious instruction was imparted on two levels. The esoteric doctrine was concerned with the secret mysteries of the gnosis, which is just another way of saying religious knowledge.
Yeah.
That's what the
That's
word
like
gnosis is.
GNO.
Yeah.
SIS. Yeah. Gnosis. Yeah.
I'm telling everybody that. I'm not saying you don't know that. I'm just saying I didn't know that. So
Okay. Yeah.
every time I run into a word I don't know, I tell people.
So yeah, well, yeah, I think you touched on that one time before, and I'm like, it's the root of most of the words. Like if you think of someone who's agnostic, they're non-religious. So it's gnosis.
That's a good point.
And it's a delicious potato dumpling. that's gnocchi. Religious potatoes. Let's do this. Sorry, Dale, I'll cut you off again.
Oh, that's fine. The gnosis reserved for the initiated elite, while the exoteric doctrine took the form of popular myths intended for the lower social classes. So basically what they're saying, like the advanced or like the upper class people get the gnosis and secret societies, and the lower class get like cults and weirdo beliefs.
Fantasy religion versus poor people religion.
Yeah. List believed that the transition from Wotanism to Christianity had preceded Wotanism was the exoteric doctrine.
Okay.
So basically, Wotanism was the old beliefs. Had turned to Christianity, had proceeded smoothly under the direction of some skalds.
He's gonna click on the skulls link.
Do I have to explain what the skalds were? They're just like some priests.
Yeah, I mean, you can leave it at that. It's fairly simple.
Yeah, they were just priests or whatever.
Yeah.
So they transferred people from Wotanism to Christianity.
Yeah.
So the native customs, festivals, and names were preserved under a Christian veneer and only needed to be decoded back into their heathen forms. This peaceful merging of the two religions had been disrupted by the forcible conversion under the bloody Charlemagne, the slaughter of the Saxons. Why'd you sigh?
Because that Charlemagne's a whole that you could do an entire series of podcasts on just Charlemagne. Anyway, I'm stoked.
I'm not going to.
No, I know.
If anybody wants to know,
I'm gonna have to dive into that.
If anybody wants to know bloody Charlemagne and his slaughter of the Saxons,
It's a great band name. We are bloody Charlemagne.
You'll have no fans in Germany, apparently.
None. Zero.
I'm not going to tell you about that because I've took you down enough rabbit holes. That I feel like that's hard history.
Yeah.
And that's just a bummer because it's just this guy Charlemagne killing a bunch of people.
Yeah.
And I don't want to bum you guys out.
Yeah. Literally a rampage.
List claimed that the dominance of the Roman Catholic Church in Austria-Hungary constituted a continuing occupation of the Germanic tribes by the Roman Empire, albeit now in religious form, and a continuing persecution of the ancient religion of the German peoples and the Celts. So this is the pinpoint of how Germany felt about the Christians and stuff. So at this point, they had this thing called Libens Reform, and that's basically a return back to nature where they're like,
right.
we used to have all these Norse beliefs. We used to just fucking have a party. And then if you watch that movie Midsummer, it wasn't really a party because they like killed a bunch of people.
Less a party and again, more slaughter.
Yeah. So they're like, let's get back to a natural life. Let's shun materialism. Let's do yoga. Let's do organic farming. Because I guess this would be strong too in the like industrial revolution when that was basically the pinpoint when people stopped farming their own food and got like half rotten garbage that they bought in markets and stuff. Yeah. And then at this point is where a bunch of people left Germany and went to California. They were like because if you're like an organic farmer, turn of the century California is paradise because it's paradise. Yeah, super good growing time,
great
super
land.
Long seasons, no winter,
fertile soil, beautiful weather.
And they all became vegetarians and had communal living. And this was like at the turn of the century.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was List, and that was what he asserted. And so everybody's like, oh, this sounds pretty good. And then along comes this guy named Jörg Lanz-Liebenfels, and he creates Ariosophy.
You got it. Nailed it on the second.
Yeah. So it's like, oh, this is where it kind of gets dank. And it's like Liebenfels and List kind of were like in each other's and the other thing is there's like 8 different secret societies at this point. Like there's the Thule Society, the German Garden. Here, I think I wrote down so it goes German Norden, then the Thule Society, and then someone from the Thule Society starts the National Workers' Party, which turns into
the Nazis.
Well, Hitler joins the National Worker Party and then it turns into the Nazis. So let's talk about theozoology. So Ariosophy was created by Jörg Lanz-Liebenfels. He was greatly influenced by this guy List, who was greatly influenced by theosophy. So this is basically just the chain of evolution to where we eventually get to Nazism.
Yeah.
And this theozoology book that he wrote, I'm just going to read you a synopsis, because once you hear this, you're like, oh, I see where that
Okay.
Nazi.
That's wondering where this is going, what theozoology has to do with this, but go for it.
Yeah. And I know I said synopsis. It's not that short. This is like 3 paragraphs. Are you okay with more reading?
I'm ready. More reading. Let's go.
Because you're my canary in the coal mine. Yeah. Like if you're just being nice and putting up with this because you like me, and I'm
no, I want to hear about this now. I need to know what the theozoology piece is interesting. I need to hear,
because I want to know if I'm losing my 5 listeners at this point.
Yeah. Well, I'm one of them, so you've only got 4 right now.
Yeah, they're like, fuck, and they're like, I'm tapping out.
I think that like theozoology is interesting because like I want to hear about what this is. This is Noah's Ark shit, or is this?
This is the good shit. No, this isn't.
Okay,
this is
get into it.
This is basically where you're like, oh, I see where the Nazis came from. So in 1903, Viennese ex-Cistercian monk, Bible scholar, and an inventor named Jörg Lanz-Liebenfels published a lengthy article under the Latin title Anthropozune Biblicum, or the Biblical Man-Animal, in a journal for biblical studies edited by Moritz Altschuler, a Jewish admirer of Guido von List. So this guy, this Ashur, he's like a producer of books or whatever. He basically sees this Jörg thing and he's like, oh, this is like that List guy I love. I'll publish this. And the author undertook a comparative survey of ancient Near Eastern cultures in which he detected evidence of iconography and literature that seemed to point to continued survival into early historical times of hominid ape men, similar to the dwarfish Neanderthal men known from fossil remains in Europe, or the Pithecanthropus, or what we know them now as Homo erectus from Java. Furthermore, Lanz systematically analyzed the Old Testament in the light of his hypothesis, identifying and interpreting coded references to the ape men that substantiated an illicit practice of interbreeding between humans and the lower species in antiquity. So this is where, like, one of his main beliefs is that the Aryans with the mental superpowers lost these superpowers because they interbred with
the next level down of
they interbred with the precursors of Jewish people, the Semites from
okay, here we go. This is where it's gonna get
this is where it
gets dicey, because right.
Sorry, I have to go back to the root races for 1 second.
Fine.
Sorry. So in which root race was it? I just have to find in the Atlantean subroot race, the one before Aryans, there was 7 sub races in the Atlanteans, and one of them was the Semites,
right?
And they went over and moved to the Levant area, which from the previous
global map,
Templar Knights.
Yeah. Oh, right.
That's where all that shit was happening. Gotcha. So that's where
the cradle of civilization.
Yeah. So he was saying that the people from there interbred with the Aryans and brought them down, and then they turned into regular people and lost all their fucking dope superpowers, which I don't condone. Yeah. We are talking about Nazis and their crazy dumb beliefs, and they did end up doing the Holocaust because they're fucking idiot, crazy, evil assholes.
So this is who's positing this theory? This
is Jörg Lanz-Liebenfels in 1905. This is in his book Theozoology.
Theozoology, right? So this is where I see where you're going with it. I see like how this leads up to this. It's just like it's that's some dodgy ass theory, right?
Oh, yeah, it's uncomfortable for sure.
Yeah.
And it's like, and the other thing was like, if you Google like Aryans and stuff, it was supposed to come from Indo-European and stuff. And this guy was like, no, it happened in Norway. That's where they come from.
Wow.
So he fudged the stats a bit and was saying the Aryan subrace that came from the Atlanteans came from Norway instead of like the East.
Yeah. But this is this whole part of history too, where like there's no one to do checks and balances on this stuff, and you just believed whoever was an expert at the time. So somebody reading this picks it up and goes, "This guy is a credible person who wrote something."
Oh yeah,
so
and that someone who read this and picked it up was fucking Hitler.
Right.
Because this guy, Jörg von Liebenfels, he started this magazine called Ostara.
Yeah.
In like 4 years after he wrote this book. And it's just like, it's basically magazine form of all these bullshit theories. And when Hitler was a starving artist in Vienna, he read all these and he's like, this guy's fucking smart.
Yeah.
And that's what got him.
He's onto something here.
Yeah. So it was like List influenced Liebenfels, Liebenfels influenced Hitler.
Right. Yeah.
So
therein lies the chain of horror. Cool.
Yeah, exactly. There's more to the synopsis. Sorry.
Keep it up.
In 1905, he expanded these researches into fundamental statement of doctrine titled, I'm just going to read the English version because the Latin version is very long and hard to pronounce.
And we already know how you are with English words.
Right? There's umlauts in it. That's never an easy time. So theozoology, or the science of the sodomite apelings and the divine electron.
Whew.
So the title alone.
The title alone.
Fucking know how this guy felt.
Yeah. Just give it away the context in that title.
Yeah. Don't judge a book by its title. Yeah, maybe this time.
God. Maybe this time.
Yeah, maybe this time.
Advice. Yeah.
I mean, unless you're into that sort of thing, which there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, could be a good book. He claimed that the Aryan peoples originated from interstellar deities named Theozoa, who bred by electricity while lower rates. So remember how I was saying the seventh root race is us in the sky, like breeding by electricity? This guy took that part out and he was like, that wasn't the seventh root race. That was the fifth root race, the Aryans. They could already do that. But
so he's fucking up the system for his own purposes to promote a book.
Yeah. So these people who bred by electricity, the lower races were the result of interbreeding between humans and ape men. So he was saying that the lower non-electrical superpower men were, I mean, maybe we shouldn't call this ape men and call them proto-humans. Because he was saying that they were Homo erectus or Neanderthal. So he's basically saying that humans and Homo erectus are two different things.
Right.
So he's suppositing that humans turned into like Homo sapiens sapiens. Is that the right word? Yeah, like what we are today.
What we are right now.
Interbreeding with Homo erectus.
Okay. Yeah, that's okay.
I mean, this is like this is butt clenching.
It is. It's like it's sphincter puckering horror. So he's taking the seventh. Oh my God, what's it called again? Sorry,
root race.
Root race.
Yeah.
And like applying a piece of the seventh root race to the fifth. So he's actually like in this text, in this book that he's writing, in this theory that he's positing, he's sort of stealing from the future and putting that on the current people and making them seem a superior root race to the previous one, or within the same fifth root race. There's a differentiation. There's two types of humans within the fifth root race. There's the higher Aryans with magic, and then the lower people, the Homo erectus, and then the crossbreeding has removed that magic from the glory of the fifth root race, Aryans. Here comes Hitler reading this going, yes, this dude knows what he's talking about. And
Hitler's like, that's why nobody buys my art. Not because it's shitty, but because they are lower level humans.
Because they're lower level humans and their magic is gone. And then that somehow gets turned into Jewish people.
Because because they supposed that it was the one specific sub-root race of the Atlanteans.
Yeah, here's where we get here. Yeah, that's
I mean, we had to
Yeah.
come here eventually. We're talking
yeah.
about the
No, I know.
Nazis.
It is
Very
uncomfortable
uncomfortable though.
because it's not like, yeah, that's a heavy topic for sure, right? Like it's not like it's not like it's a walk in the park where you're like, yeah,
I mean, this almost makes it worse that it came from such dumb, batshit crazy ideas. Like before I read all this, I thought it was just like the typical
yeah, kind of an ideology that's sprung about with
reason.
with
Yeah,
the,
because
well, we're
back
taught
in
that
like the
school,
Templar
right?
Knights era, they like okay, so would you specifically target Jewish people? It's called a pogrom, and that's because it's happened so many times throughout history. There's a specific word for it, and that happened like from my previous series, the Templar Knights. King Louis the 14th or
Did
the
the same
4th,
thing. Yeah,
he got rid of all the Jewish people in France because he owed them money, because the Jewish people, unlike Christians, could lend money with interest. So
right.
I always thought that was kind of the same reason that Nazi Germany got rid of the Jewish people, was because of the whole old money type, but not because it was just some fucking idiot made this bullshit crazy theory based on two other bullshit crazy theories.
Yeah, it's like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon bullshit theory.
Yeah.
It's
And
it
it's
just keeps
almost like,
trickling down. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. It's like you have like, when you talk about slippery slopes and stuff, you're like, well, those aren't that bad. But then you look at this and you're like, yeah, they are. Like if we were to
that's
stop fucking this List guy from looking into theosophy, and then Liebenfels looking into List, like we could have stopped this back then, but like nobody
right.
knew where it was going.
So we know where to go in the historical reference if we learn how to time travel. Where to snip the head off. It's actually not
Exactly.
Hitler. It's pre-Hitler.
And we'll go back in history. We'll be like, we're looking for List, and they'll be like, a list of what?
Yeah.
And
Oh,
this
no,
will
it's
be-
this guy. Yeah.
Sorry to put the worst pun in for the worst like time in history. Yeah. So
Comedy
back
is
to
all
this
about
reading.
timing.
The
Yeah.
effects of racial crossing cause the atrophy of paranormal powers inherited from the gods, but these could be restored by selective breeding of pure Aryan lineages. The book relied, so this is where we get into like the breeding, like Nazis had breeding farms where there's this thing called the Thule Society. And to join that, you had to prove your pure Aryan heritage back to 1650 or something. So if you had pure Aryan
Jesus.
lineage for 400 years at this point, you were
You
sent
were
to
eligible
this
for
like,
that program, for the breeding
yeah, this like
program.
eugenics program
Good
where they were
God.
trying to breed Aryans with Aryans to make superpower people.
Right. Getting that magic back.
Yeah.
That was actually bullshit. So
Yeah.
getting that magic, that made up magic bullshit back.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's, oh my God. Okay, so the thing that you're taught in school is that Hitler just sort of showed up and then like committed a genocide against the Jewish people, the Jewish population in Europe, and Hitler was bad. And that's like the history that you learn. You don't learn about List, you don't learn about Libens, you don't learn about all this stuff, right? Like it's,
Yeah, exactly. Like
You-
that's
you-
why this
you're-
is so tricky, because you're like, well,
Right.
Hitler and Himmler to an extent too just tricked the Germans into going crazy, and like
right.
shit
Well,
wasn't going their way after World War I. So he came in with promises, and they're like,
But
it
like
was
you
kind of
said,
like, yeah,
there was historically there was already a belief there that they were perceiving
Mm-hmm.
themselves as higher class human beings. So
oh,
if
you
that
want to
belief
hear
is,
something crazy?
if that belief's already there, the fires are set to be stoked.
Oh, okay. So this next paragraph, it also
Okay.
reveals something that's a little bit crazy. So in the same year, which is like okay, in the same year, I think this is still 1905, Lanz commenced publication of the journal Austera, named after a pagan Germanic goddess of spring, to promote his vision of racial purity. So this is like the fucking Aryan Nation type of magazine where he's like bringing up, he's like publishing all this like articles about like how humans used to have magical powers and shit. And then on December 25th, 1907, he founded the Order of the New Templars. a mystical association with its headquarters at Burg Werfenstein, a castle in Upper Austria overlooking the river Danube. Its declared aim was to harmonize science, art, and religion on a basis of racial consciousness. Rituals were designed to beautify life in accordance with Aryan aesthetics and to express the order's theological system that lands called Aryo-Christianity. The order was the first to use the swastika in the Aryan meaning. So we all hear like how the swastika used to be around in like Buddhist times and stuff, and it meant good luck.
There's a couple of different things about that too. Like, wasn't it the reverse?
Well,
At some
it
point,
isn't
it was a
reversed
reverse
yet.
pattern, right?
Hitler reverses it when he's in the
Gotcha. Okay. I don't know the history
Thule
of that.
Society founder who founded the like Workmen's Party. He was the guy who's like, yo, you should reverse this stuff.
This pattern.
So and like here's where I could kind of see, like, I'm not defending any of this, but here when it says like there's that one where he's like their aim was to harmonize science, art, and religion on a, and then you're like, that sounds good. Like you want to harmonize.
Yeah, but then
all
he
the
adds
stuff.
in that, and then he adds race to the end of that. And you're like, fuck, you lost me, right? Good.
And
good,
racial consciousness.
Good. Terrible. What are you doing? Why are you? What's the extra step? Why the extra step?
Yeah, he's like, we're gonna do meditation. We're gonna eat organic. We're gonna do some yoga,
and we're all gonna be white.
Nature bathing, and we're only letting white people do it. And you're like, wait, what?
Yeah. What was that last one? Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's yeah. And again, we're looking at it through the lens of our like modern society too. So it's like, again, the pre-internet days and before minorities were more visible, right? And like you're in this society where this is the accepted behavior. And again, not like you not condoning it in any fashion, but you can totally see how it's like, yeah, okay, cool, right on. This is awesome. Let's do this. This is the way we should do things. Because there's like nobody to tell you differently, and there's no, not condoning it by any stretch of the imagination, but when you're like so incredibly homogenized within your society that it's like shit like this springs up and everyone's like, that's a hell of a great idea.
Yeah. So this is basically where I kind of want to get out, like, because I don't know, we don't really have to go through the Nazi Party once Hitler shows up, because we all know
everyone knows that part of history. That's the part we're taught in school. So.
Yeah, like exactly, like you said before, we were taught Hitler shows up, goes into this workers' party, takes it over, renames it the Nazi Party.
The thing that I hear every time I watch a document, it makes it sound like I watch tons of documentaries about Hitler. Every time I hear something or read something about Hitler, they always the thing that they always the author, the producer, whoever is writing the piece always says about Hitler, he was such a great orator. Hitler was such a great orator. That's the part we were always taught, is that he was like this gifted orator, and that's the reason why he was able to sway everyone over. So like you don't hear any of this previous history. It's simply that Hitler got into power. He took over the country. The country was ripe for change. It was post World War I. Everything, they needed a leader. Somebody came in. He was this sort of this ephemeral deity type person, and he was a hell of a speechwriter and a hell of a talker. And everyone's like, oh yeah, okay, cool, that's history. And he was a terrible person and he killed all these people. And you're like, well,
actually, did you know Hitler was like Hitler? I don't know. Sorry, Hitler was actually had like speaking instructors and stuff. Like he was a good
totally was coached
orator.
Yeah.
But then someone from the Thule Society saw him and they're like, hey, this guy's
really public
good
relations, man. That's what it is. All it needs is somebody or a group of people to hone that skill in, and then all of a sudden it becomes 10 times what it could be.
Yeah. Okay. So I just want to go from how we get from Lorgan Liebensfels or whatever. So
Jorgen Lieben,
the Nazi Party. It's only like 2 more steps and then we're done.
Get it on.
See, that's kind of good that we just kept going through.
No, and it was good. It was good to get through. Like whoever's watching this, if you suffered through the intro part, not suffered, you know what I mean? If you made it through the first hour and you're like, okay, where's this going? It got to the meat, and we're like, I got incredibly uncomfortable talking about it for a minute. And now I know why Andrea didn't want to do this one. But because like now I'm attached to it forever. But you're right.
Yeah.
We're now into the meat and of things, and like talking about why I
Yeah.
said meat. I even used a non-vegetarian
Yeah.
reference. But
Now
anyway, carry on, Dale.
now we're into the part that history will tell you, not like.
Yeah.
So this party, German Norden, started in 1912 by this guy Theodor Frisch and several prominent German occultists, including Philip Stoff, who held office in the Guido von List Society. So there was a
It's
society
a society based on this
dedicated to
dude.
that
Okay.
fucking List guy. So
Can I retract my
and then in
previous statement of how
1960,
much I
sorry?
Can I retract my previous statement of how much I like Guido von List as a name? Fuck that guy. Carry on.
Yeah. Of all the German first names, Guido
Guido's
is not
one of
one
them.
that I would have. Every time I read Guido, like Guido von, those
Yeah.
two words
They
together.
don't jive. Yeah.
Oh,
He
and you
sounds-
want to know how much of the putz this guy was? His name was just Guido List, but he added von in there because it's like
Make
saying
it fancy.
sir or something.
Yeah,
it's like
it's of. Von is, you should know this. You're Dutch. It's Dutch for of.
yeah.
Right. I'm Guido of List. I belong to something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Spice it
in
up.
oh sorry.
No, go ahead.
So in 1916, during World War I, the German Norden split into two parts. Edward von Brockhausen became the Grand Master of the Loyalist German Norden. Pole, previously the order's chancellor, founded the schismatic offshoot, the German Norden Waldvetter of the Holy Grail, which that's a whole nother thing to get into.
Whew.
So wait, oh God.
Nice tie into Indiana Jones.
Yeah. So this second,
As a historical documentary.
Yeah. I mean, that was like, it had Nazis, the Templar Knights, the Holy Grail.
So the Crystal Skulls later on.
In it? Sorry,
No.
you were saying?
The Crystal Skulls later on. No, it doesn't have the Spirit of Destiny. The Spear of Destiny.
Oh, the Spear of Destiny, in case everybody is wondering, that is the spear that they stabbed Jesus in the side when he was on the cross to kill him earlier. And then someone kept the spear, and then so it's funny because Hitler and the Nazi group were trying to like get rid of Christianity and all this stuff, but they're still looking for like Christian relics to get their power from them.
Sorry, I'll stop interrupting you. Carry on.
No, go ahead. Interrupt as much as you want. That's what you're here for.
I know. I was just thinking about like I read this other thing a while back on the internet about how total side note in The Mandalorian, the spear is a representative of the Spear of Destiny, and I was like, oh god, here we go. Gotta go down this wormhole. Like we're crossing my love of Star Wars with my love of weird history. Let's put this all together and make it happen.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, I'll stop talking about Disney Plus shows. Go ahead.
Okay, so the link between I was just trying to find the specific link between German Norden and the Thule Society, and what happened was the Thule Society was originally a German study group headed by Walter Neuhaus, a wounded World War I veteran turned art student from Berlin, who had become a keeper of pedigrees for the German Norden. So a guy from German Norden who was the keeper of pedigrees, which
I mean, it's like a someone who records your lineage, right?
Yeah.
Pedigree is lineage. It's like you're pure, like they do that for dogs and cats, right? There's a pedigree keeper that's somebody who like the lineage of the purity of the lineage of the people.
Yeah. So this party, I think this was a secret society, starts in 1911, and then. So the Thule Society, in 1917, Neuhaus moved to Munich. The Thule Society was to be the cover for the Munich branch of the German Norden. So there you go. But events developed differently as a result of a schism in the order. In 1918, Neuhaus was contacted in Munich by Rudolf von Sobotendorf, an occultist and newly elected head of the Bavarian province of the schismatic offshoot known as the German Warden Waldvetter of the Holy Grail. So when the German Norden split into two, the one that had the Holy Grail in the title contacted the leader of the Thule Society, and he was like, yo, let's team up. We're fucking both evil assholes. And then the two men became associates in a recruitment campaign. So they're like trying to find more members for this shitty society. And then, okay, so the primary focus of the Thule Society was a claim concerning the origins of the Aryan race. People who wanted to join the Germanic Order of the Thule Society had to sign a special blood declaration of faith concerning their lineage. So this was where you had to be like Aryan for so long. The German Worker Party is DAP, which is what becomes the Nazi Party.
DAP.
After World War I ended, Adolf Hitler returned to music, having no formal education or career prospects. He tried to remain in the army for as long as possible. In July 1919, he was appointed intelligence agent of a reconnaissance commando of the Reichswehr to influence other soldiers and to investigate the DAP party. While monitoring the activities of the DAP, Hitler became attracted to founder Anton Drexler's anti-Semitic, national, anti-capitalist, and anti-Marxist ideas. While attending the party meeting at the Sterneckbrauer beer hall.
All the best ideas are had at a beer hall.
Sterneckbrauer beer hall on the 12th of September 1919, Hitler became involved in a heated political argument with a visitor, Professor Baumann, who questioned the soundness of Gottfried Feder's arguments in support of Bavaria separatism and against capitalism. In vehemently attacking the man's arguments, he made an impression to other party members with his oratory skills, and according to Hitler, Baumann left the hall acknowledging unequivocal defeat. Impressed with Hitler's oratory skills, Drexler encouraged him to join on the orders of his army superiors. Hitler applied to join the party. Although Hitler initially wanted to form his own party, he claimed to have been convinced to join DAP because it was small and he could eventually become its leader. So Hitler joins DAP, turns it into the Nazi party, and then you know where it goes from there.
Has a rap battle with Baumann and defeats him 8 Mile style.
Yeah, that was what you were talking about when you were saying he was well known as a good orator.
Yeah, like constantly, right? Like there's everything. I don't know if it's like canon or mythology at that point, right? Like literally everything you read about Hitler says he's this great orator, right? Including the piece you just read. So it's the thing that we're taught in school, right? That he like had the gift of the gab and was able to like get people on his side simply by talking, right? And you're just like, Jesus, like it's a fine line between a cult of personality and a world leader.
Yeah, exactly. The funny thing about this podcast was I wanted to start it basically where Hitler was in the army and what Hitler's occult beliefs, like with the Spear of Destiny and the Holy Grail. I had no idea about any of this other shit. But as soon as you hear Atlantis,
you fell into it. Yeah,
and
you got stuck on Atlantis. Yeah,
and fucking people with psychic superpowers, you're like, oh, I wanna know more about that, because, and also it's kind of nice because you could talk about the Nazi Party without talking about the Nazi Party.
Right. Yeah, and then the second you have to get into the second that you get into that, the like actual Nazi Party stuff, it gets uncomfortable and it gets like you have to talk about serious historical problems and like and how those effects ripple down to today's current mode of how we operate. It's like, yeah, that part sucks, but like let's talk more about real powered airships because that part rules.
Yeah, exactly. And then like I was thinking about it before. It's like where you have knowledge and wisdom, and right now in society we have open access to knowledge like on the internet and stuff, so you're not necessarily getting all the wisdom, whereas back then you just had the wisdom, like you just had wise people telling you stuff and you didn't know if it was true or not, so you couldn't back up and double check their knowledge. So it's almost like we're at an opposite in just 100 years. Okay, Geoff is freezing up. Oh, are you back?
I think I'm back.
Okay, I was just going to end it because I'm worried that if we go too long, the Zoom video won't record that.
Oh, right. Yeah.
We're at like over 2 hours, which is good.
Holy cool.
Thank you so much for doing this.
You're welcome. Did you have anything that you wanted to follow up? It looks like I'm back now.
I was just going to start spouting off and trying to make myself sound smart about knowledge versus wisdom. And I made that point, but can't remember what I was going to say about it.
Oh.
But it's basically like, I don't know, back to what we started with when we were talking about light versus dark and Christianity and stuff. And it's like, you read stuff like this.
Oh, you've got to be kidding me.
You froze again. I mean, it's kind of funny because you look like a video game character when you're frozen because the background's all fuzzy. Oh, there you go.
I'm back.
Hey, look at those tats.
I was just stretching. I'm like, oh, I got caught. Yeah.
I'll just end it there.
Okay, sorry, Dale.
You're making
I don't
me
know, my
want to
internet's
shut
being
you. Hey,
a
no.
jerk.
As you're rolled to keep me on track, this is a good keeping me on track of being like, hey, it's 2 hours. Even my computer is fed up with this.
My Shaw internet provider is like, yeah, you're done, buddy. You've been on there a long time.
I think before you froze, we were just talking about how it was good to do this podcast because we could talk about where the Nazi Party started and where they came from without having to talk about all the evil shit that the Nazi Party did. Oh, and I was going to mention that the aforementioned last podcast on the left, they did a series on Dr. Mengele, who was like a Nazi doctor who's like did some of the most evil shit I ever heard. But that podcast kind of ruined my life because I heard the worst thing I've ever heard in my life about what the Nazi Party did. I'm not going to tell everybody because it's not my spot. But if you want to hear the worst thing you've ever heard happen to people, go listen to the Mengele series on last podcast on the left. And every time, and it's so bad that every time someone just like calls a right-wing semi-racist person a Nazi, you're like, don't fucking throw that word around because
it's extreme at that point.
It is what those people are doing is not evil enough. And when you call someone who's slightly racist and doesn't have the political beliefs you have Nazi, it lessens the impact on what the Nazis actually were. And that is, I'm not even going to say throughout history because people have been fucking evil to each other. Like you look at the Aztecs and stuff and how they sacrificed virgins on temples and stuff, but they are easily the most evil in recent history. Not because of I keep saying this and then I keep thinking of other horrible things.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm like, I can think of way more recent terrible things that people are doing to each other in current history.
I guess on the scale that they did it, because the Nazis not only killed 6 million Jewish people, but they also killed a combined 8 million Russian and Polish people that were just civilians that didn't have to do with the war. So they have 14 million people who weren't active combatants killed. Yeah. And that's disgusting.
Yeah. Yep. If there's one thing we've learned throughout history, it's that humans don't exactly maintain kindness towards one another. Oh, no. So, if there's a lesson to be learned through any of this is like, just don't be shitty. And it's easier said than done, obviously, because it seems like we're predestined to be horrible to one another. But
yeah,
I don't think that's necessarily the case. And we're the ones who can change that.
Yeah. Like I was saying, it's like my personal mantra for life is treat others how you want to be treated. And I did learn it in the church, and I've kind of disassociated with the church because the church has problematic history and stuff. But if you basically in every walk of your life treat other people the same way you want them to treat you, that doesn't mean you have to be fake nice
Ned Flanders.
And give them the benefit of the doubt, because you don't want people to be fake nice to you.
Yeah.
So just treat other people how you want to be treated. So it's like, and let this carry over to online.
Yeah.
In the comments when you're tweeting and stuff. So it's like, if you're tweeting like a dickhead, just think about someone tweeting that to you and you being like, oh.
Yeah. Why are you being an ass to me?
Yeah.
There's no need for it. Yeah. And you talk about Twitter, like I left Twitter for a good solid couple of years and I've come back and like nothing has changed. Right.
Like if anything, it's worse.
It's worse. It's just it's so easy to take the negativity route and to like chastise and berate. And it's much harder to put critical thought into things and like actually grab information from all sides and look at things from different perspectives. And I know I'm being kind of vague, but I'm just like, listen, you learn more through listening and you achieve more through kindness than you do from having reactions to horrible things that just stir the pot or create the chaos. Don't do that. Don't do that. Live peacefully, right? Interact peacefully.
And as a person who has a podcast who talks, I know Geoff said you learn most from listening, and you do, and it's fucking hard. And
It is
don't
hard.
worry, active listening is something you have to work on.
Yep.
I mean, I had to work on it a lot. I'm still kind of bad at it because people will say stuff and I'm like, oh, I want to say something about that. But it's like, you got to let people kind of get their whole thought out, hopefully.
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. Like, that's a tough one. And I mean, we're like way off the mark of this podcast, but I think this is a super important message, though, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, we have to listen to one another a little more often to prevent shit like this from happening in the future. Right? It's so easy to get caught up in the pain and the horribleness that around you. I mean, like, what can you think about what you can do to help? And it's probably not on Twitter, and it's probably not on Instagram, and it's probably not on YouTube. It's interacting in your community and being out there and being involved with the things that matter.
Yeah. Or like Geoff said, you can still help some people, because some people are only interacting with people on social media and stuff for whatever reason, especially with COVID, how everybody's stuck in their house. Just be nice to those people. Don't be like overly nice and disingenuous. Just be like your true self, but kind of nice. I don't know.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I mean, you've known me long enough. I'm the same person on social media that I am in real life, which is largely inactive and hiding on my couch. But that's true. You are a very genuine person, and the fact that you're the same in all, like, on this, in real life, on Twitter, that's why I enjoy you so much. And I try to be the same way. Like, if I'm not the same person on Twitter, you're uniquely Dale, and you've been the same for the 20 odd years I've known you, and it's wonderful. You're a wonderful human, man.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I like talking to you. These are great times to catch up and talk.
Yeah, I like talking. Dude, my favorite thing about podcasting.
Catching up with people and talking to people.
Yeah, I get to corner people for an hour, and they just have to talk to me. 2 hours. This time is 2 hours. Usually it's only an hour. Like, it used to be like, remember when before smartphones, when we'd be bored and we'd just be like, all right, what do you want to do? Let's go for coffee. And you'd go to Denny's and just have meal, hang out, and then sit there and talk for 2 hours. Yeah, totally. About nothing. Bullshit. I've been recently rewatching Seinfeld, and it's like the level of technology within Seinfeld is like, they sit at a coffee shop and they talk, and if they need to use the phone, they have to get up and go, like, use a payphone, or like go to somebody's apartment and use a phone. I'm like, now you go out for coffee with your friend and they just sit there. Yeah. And so when you're on a podcast, it's kind of nice because I'm like, we're interacting, we're talking, we've got a subject, we're doing something interesting, and we're discussing some hard shit, we're discussing some fantasy shit, and that's what makes it fun. The topics make it interesting, even if they sometimes suck or they're hard to deal with. You still have to approach that stuff. So. Yeah, like you said, like, the Nazi is a terrible topic, but we got to learn about Lemurians laying eggs and Vril-powered airships and like how we're going to grow psychic powers in the future. I can't wait till my head gets bigger. That's going to be awesome. Oh my God. Yeah, right? Like, just grow this melon. Like, I'm only at a 5 head. Once I get to the 6 or 7 head, I'm clearly at a 10 head here at this point. Goes all the way back. See, you guys, you and Derek, you're both bald. Yeah. You guys are kind of lucky because you never know where your hair starts or your hair doesn't. So you don't know how big your forehead. Like me, I always joke that my forehead isn't growing. My face is just sliding down. Sliding down. It's gravity. Sliding down my skull. Yeah. Next, like, my lips will be here. My eyes will be here. I'll just have like. Your forehead's elongating by force of gravity. It has nothing to do with your hair receding. It's just everything sloping forward. Yeah, I'll start shaving my head, and then people will be like, wow, Del, you have a big forehead. I'll be like, prove it. Yeah. So you don't know where it starts. Technically, my hairline starts back here at my shoulders. It's funny because last night I had a dream. I had a bald spot right here. Yeah. And I wasn't even upset. I was just like, I'm over 40. Who cares? Yeah. Fuck, about time. I considered growing my hair back in a couple of times, but it's like Krusty the Clown. It's here, and then like a little tufty guy there, and then like a horseshoe. Yeah.
Horseshoe,
Speaking
horseshoe of sadness.
Speaking of Seinfeld and times being different back then, remember in TV when it wasn't socially acceptable to have a bald head? Like
Yeah,
I read this thing in the X-Files, Skinner had hair on the sides of his head because they
Yeah.
thought because he would in real life he rocked a bald head, but they're like, you look too rough with a bald head. So that's why in like the 80s and early part of the 90s, everybody had the fucking
the
monk
skullet.
rings
Yeah,
because they wouldn't let him just be bald.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's so that's like we're talking like even the 60s and 70s. If I looked like this in the 60s and 70s, I'm a prisoner or a roughneck or a hooligan or a like now I'm just a dad or possibly a Starbucks barista, right? There's nothing tough about my look. This is just But like a few years ago, my mom would have disowned me if I looked like this, right?
Doesn't that feel like kind of a ripoff in some ways? Like,
totally.
I don't have as much tattoos as you, but I got like forearm tattoos.
Yeah.
And that used to mean you're tough as shit. But now people see you and you're like, whatever. And you're like, no, it's supposed to be my like hard persona where people think I'm a badass.
Yeah.
So I don't have to talk to people as much and I could just be left alone.
Yeah, it's that whole thing in tattoos now where it's like they have the reverse sleeves. Like my sleeves aren't cool anymore. I need neck tats and knuckle tats.
Yeah,
and
actually, my tattooist, when I was getting my last one, she called it the California bodysuit. When you have just your neck, face, and your hands.
Yeah, totally.
So it looks like you
a SoundCloud
got tattoos until you take your shirt off.
Take your shirt off, you're totally naked. Yeah, I have the reverse. I've got like ugly leg tattoos and arm full of tattoos, and I have no neck tattoos. I have one knuckle tattoo, but only because it's replacement for a wedding ring.
Oh, I was gonna do that too because I didn't want to get my finger ripped off.
And that's the thing, right? I'm working on motorcycles and cars and stuff all the time. I was doing shit with rings on, so I'm like, no, I don't. When I was playing hockey too, I got hit in the wedding ring with a puck and it hurts like hell. So it shouldn't be open hand casting.
Having your wedding ring would make it hurt any less, would it? Just getting
it still hurts, but it got like pinched, right? And it like like so the puck hits it and it like pinches into your finger, and it warped the ring and it got kind of caught around my finger. It was really, really terrible.
Okay, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna stop recording. We don't have to stop talking. I'm just gonna stop the recording. So that's the podcast. I'm just gonna end it now.
Thank you for having me on the Dale Show. This was pretty awesome.
Hey, no problem. Thanks for coming on.
You're welcome.
Thanks for sticking it out for over 2 hours. That was good.
Man, no, it's good times. Like, it's nice to get out and do something and talk about something out of my comfort zone and wheelhouse. It's good times.
Yeah, way out of the comfort zone. Well,
way out of it.
The first half was within my comfort zone, but then when we talked about like the bad stuff.
If you have a podcast upcoming about like, mythological creatures, I'm in.
Yeah, that might be the way I do this is I'll be like, what should I do my next podcast on? And then I'll just leave it. And then the first thing that just kind of drifts in, like, that's why the topics are so varied. Like why I went from like
Templars
Bigfoot to Templars.
Well, Templars and Nazis connect in a weird way. Right. But Sasquatch doesn't really connect at all.
That was just because we went to Harrison.
Right.
And you got a mural of it. And I was like, that's dope.
Yeah,
and then this time I can't remember why Nazis came up, but I was like, I want to know. I think I was watching a TV show because they're always talking about the occult beliefs of the Nazis. And I was like, I want to look into that. And basically this podcast is an excuse for me to like research stuff that has nothing to do with anything. And then if I talk about it, it's like, it's not a waste of time.
Maybe this is an off-camera thing we talk about after. I fell down the wormhole of Mystery Flesh Pit National Park. Have you ever heard of this?
What? Okay, I'm going to stop.
Okay.
I'm going to stop because we're going to go for like hours. I'm just going to stop the recording. Yeah. So thanks for coming on the Dale Show. Me and Geoff are going to go talk about a flesh pit. And maybe if it's interesting enough, we'll come back and talk about it next week.
Come back and talk about it. Hell yeah.
Bye.